Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome back to the LCI Greenroom. I'm Jacob Winograd. I'm the host of the Biblical Anarchy podcast here at the Libertarian Christian Institute, part of our Christians for Liberty network. I'm glad that you guys are watching tonight. Those of you who are watching live, those of you who are watching afterwards as well. We're going to have a pretty good conversation, I think, tonight between two friends of mine. They're kind of meeting for the first time, but I've known both of these gentlemen for a little while. And we're going to be talking about some things pertaining to politics. And I just wanted to do the usual disclaimers here at the beginning that we, as the Libertarian Christian Institute, insofar as I'm here representing them tonight, we're a nonprofit and we don't make endorsements of parties or candidates or anything like that. But the purpose of this conversation should be informative, should be educational, and to kind of showcase what the issues are from a Christian perspective and a libertarian perspective going into this November, because there's a lot of critical issues that are at stake that people care about. And so that's what we're here to dive into and discuss. And so sort of the informal resolution for tonight is, for libertarians, what are they going to do in November? Should they support Chase Oliver, who is the Libertarian Party's presidential nominee, or a lot of libertarians, including Dave here tonight, think that perhaps libertarians would be better off throwing their support behind Donald Trump, and there's going to be some reasons given for that. Before we get into it, please make sure, wherever you guys are watching, if you want to like this stream, subscribe wherever you're at. That helps us out, boost it so that more people can watch. And yeah, so I'll kind of introduce you both one at a time before we kind of dive into it. Of course, Alex should be no stranger. He has a little bit of an unfair advantage here. He's kind of playing on the home field.
Right.
One of our fellow podcast hosts here at the Libertarian Christian Institute, host of the Protestant Libertarian Podcast. Alex, you want to give just a little brief introduction to yourself and just your general general opinion and mindset going into this conversation?
Yeah, I mean, I'm Alex, the host of the Protestant Libertarian Podcast. I live in the state of Kentucky, and so I'm sure this is going to come up later on. My vote really does not matter at all because Donald Trump is going to get all 8 of my state's electoral votes. So I'm in a very convenient position as a libertarian to be able to say that regardless of who won the LP nominee, I could throw my vote to them because it really doesn't matter. I can appreciate that the issue is probably a lot more complicated and complex for people living in other states, especially swing states where their votes really could help decide the margin of victory in this election. And so I'm really excited to talk to Dave about that tonight. I also love that Kamala Harris is not one of the 2 options that we are going to be discussing on the show today. I think that's great common ground for all of us to be starting on tonight.
Yeah, no, I think, yeah. I mean, like, some people might suggest, like, are you going to do why don't you have someone representing Harris? And I don't know. I mean, maybe I'm a little bit too impartial there, but I feel like other than just, I mean, actually, no, we'll just give the libertarian case for Kamala Harris right now. It's just full-blown collapsitarian, right? It's just like, you know what? I'm tired of this kind of slow, drawn-out movie simulation we're stuck in, and I just want to fast forward to the end. So there we go. We've represented the libertarian argument for voting for Kamala Harris. We don't need to deal with that for the rest of tonight. So yeah, Alex, I appreciate you being part of this. Dave, I've known you for a little bit longer than Alex. You and I both, I think, just have met through interacting in the Mises Caucus and the Libertarian Party, and you also have your own podcasts. I know you have your own Dave versus Goliath, and then you're also kind of a regular, I guess, co-host on The System Is Down with Dan Smots, who is a complete coward. Who will not have me on his show. So I'm calling Dan out tonight because that's what you do when you bring up Dan, is you have to call him or Dave Smith a coward. Those are the Libertarian Podcast rules. Dave, I appreciate you coming out tonight to represent sort of the other side of this conversation. You want to give a little short introduction and your opening statement?
Yeah, dudes, thank you for the invite. It's great to be here, Alex. Great to meet you, man. I, like you, am looking for a protest vote like I have been since, I voted for Ralph Nader in the year 2000. I've never voted for a Republican presidential candidate before. I've never registered as a Republican. I've never identified as a Republican. But for the first time ever, I'm considering voting for one. But yeah, I'm a Ron Paul guy. I was, your classic liberal atheist a-hole before that. Changed some opinions and grew with the revolution. Participated in the Mises Caucus takeover of the Libertarian Party, and then started a podcast, and then pretty much Dan Motz and I made that thing Facebook official, and we do the System is Down like twice a week now. So, but yeah, man, I'm excited to have this chat. I kind of more looking at this like steel manning the Trump argument versus Chase, rather than this is not an endorsement, not telling anybody how to vote. But I might try and persuade you why it's if you're going to participate in the action of it, if we're gonna operate under the assumption that we have free and fair elections and that presidents are not elected, but not selected, but elected, then yeah, I think I can make the argument that there's a utilitarian argument, at least, behind voting for Trump over Chase Oliver. But excited about talking with you guys about it tonight.
Right on. Dave, I did see a comment saying that your mic volume is still a little low to the audience. I've turned you up all I can on my end, so if you just want to mess with that a little bit, and maybe people will be able to hear you a little bit better. All right. Live stream, technical stuff out of the way. Although this is, that's rather minor. I've had Alex and I once interviewed Stephen Wolfe, who wrote the book The Case for Christian Nationalism, and we did the entire interview with Stephen I think we had like a 15-second lag behind us, and was like literally like 2 frames every like 3 or 4 seconds. It was bad. That was one of the rougher ones we ever did. So yeah, I mean, like, I was really excited to do this because, from a personal level, LCI stuff aside, I really don't know how I personally want to vote this November. And I'm probably not even going to be super public about it, but I kind of see both sides to this. I even understand the perspective of some of the like anti-political agorists who think that you shouldn't vote at all. And I'm, or at least like in this election, I know like Dave Smith has said that he probably just won't vote this election because he doesn't want to vote for Trump or obviously Harris, and he just can't really support Chase, so he'll probably not vote or write in Ron Paul or whatever. And I think it's kind of respect all these different positions, but I personally feel like I would rather vote than not vote, but then it's towards what end. So I guess kind of to kick it off, we're all libertarians here. We've all, supported the Libertarian Party through, various means or for various reasons. And some libertarians will kind of make the case that even if you don't like the libertarian candidate, that libertarian candidate is almost always going to be better than any of the duopoly candidates, unless it was like Ron Paul himself. But we all know that the Republican Party would never let him actually win a nomination fair and square. So at that point, you're kind of left, if you're going to vote, well, then you might as well make it a protest vote that goes towards something. And voting for a third-party candidate at least helps with ballot access and kind of, can help build momentum towards something. So is that a major consideration for you, Alex, and to you, Dave? Is that something where you feel like that isn't perhaps the most important thing this time around, and kind of kick it off from there?
Yeah, Dave, if you want to start this.
So I'll be honest with you guys. You said ballot access. I know that's a big one. It's a big Libertarian Party buzzword, and that is not something that I am personally hyper focused on. I'm not saying it doesn't matter. I'm not saying that. Not trying to take away from any work that people do, hustling, getting signatures and that stuff. By the way, I did do this. I'm not just armchairing this. I did the thing, did the takeover, ran one county chair, did that for 2 years. So like I participated in all this stuff, tried to get candidates, tried to get out there, tried to build a party, all that stuff. And I do really believe that the party has a lot of potential and actually a lot of political power. And I think that some people are exploring that in really new, creative ways. And I'm excited about that. But I really feel like after my 6 to 7 years trying to rehab this and turn it into something that can be useful for the liberty movement, I think that a lot of that has us spinning on the hamster wheel. Just being real with you guys. This is all, by the way, this isn't like anything new. If you go check out the Project Decentralized Revolution, like the presidential stuff, this is not heavy in there. It's kind of like a standard bearer thing, a messaging campaign kind of thing. And we should be focusing on local elections, right? So yeah, I think that guys, like, yeah, I think that, like New York, they're not going to get it. They're not going to be, in 2020, we had all 50 states, and now it's 4 less. It will probably continuously be less. Like, they are trying to kind of like work this away, right? Yeah. And we can continue to spend millions of dollars and all kinds of man hours and labor and energy. And the things that the post-libertarians got right was that there are only so many liberty, hands ready to do work. So like we kind of should think about where we focus that. So ballot access and stuff, I don't know. Like, guys, I think that the lesson from RFK, if anything, let's learn from other people's mistakes. Like, he had tens of millions more dollars, so many more thousands of donors and volunteers and all of the stuff, and he couldn't forget, couldn't even get on the debate stage. You know what I mean? We just really need to take a real reassessment of what we can do, which are some really cool stuff. We saw it this year with the Trump coming to the party and hearing some of our grievances and other things. No, I think we really need to rethink this. And I think we need to put an emphasis on liberty, lobbying for liberty. Like, how can we leverage stuff? Look at Colorado, look at what Angela's doing, and kind of take cues from those people and go from there.
Yeah, Alex, what do you think about that? Dave just said he doesn't think ballot access is really the number one consideration here. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I largely agree with much of what you just said there. We all know that the Libertarian nominee for president is never going to win the election. There's just not a chance that's ever going to happen. And I completely agree with Project Decentralized Revolution. And I think it's been successful in a way that a lot of the people that are upset with the Mises Caucus leadership of the party have not acknowledged. Like, I personally know several people in Kentucky that have ran for and won office as libertarians because of that grassroots support. And I understand why there are a lot of people in the Mises wing of the party, and I'm a part of the Mises Caucus wing of the party as well. I understand why there are a lot of people that are frustrated by Chase Oliver, because if you have a presidential candidate, the goal should be like messaging an image. You want somebody out there that's giving a bold libertarian message and that's sharing our principles. And there are a lot of people that feel, especially since Dave Smith was the front runner without even running at the very beginning of this cycle, there were a lot of people that were just disappointed with the results of that election. I mean, I definitely understand we don't want to waste a lot of money on these presidential runs, but I also know that in a state like Kentucky, where we have a very corrupt Republican Party at the state level and a lot of people that have natural libertarian leanings, I think that having another option on the ballot at the end of the year and making it to where that candidate actually has some traction, I think that would give a lot of people that are in that mind space the I guess permission to think that they could vote for somebody other than a Republican. I mean, if you look, and again, a lot of this has to do with what state you're in too. And I think we were talking about this a little bit at the beginning of the show. Like, for people that live in swing states or that live in deep blue states, the calculation might be different. But in Kentucky, we have Rand Paul and Thomas Massie. There are a lot of people that want libertarian solutions, and I just want to give them as many options as possible.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess what's weird is I feel like I might care about ballot access a bit more than both of you, although I still think that there are some people that care about it a little bit too much. But yeah, I think it probably depends on the state, might affect the calculus a little bit, because some states, I know the presidential election doesn't even really impact them, so maybe that wouldn't be a concern for you. But I guess maybe we should dive a little bit into just what are the issues with Chase and why, because some people might go, well, I mean, how bad can he be if they're not like, let's face it, we a lot of us live online or we're heavily involved in this, so like we kind of know already. But there's a lot of people who are, libertarians or libertarian adjacent who probably don't know much about this and are kind of like, okay, like, why would you guys not vote for a libertarian? What's the deal there? Dave, do you want to get into maybe what the major issues are with Chase that you think are deal breakers or that are concerns that make it hard for you to want to vote for him as a libertarian candidate?
Sure. And I just want to say too that I'm in a deep blue state, so I feel you on that, man. So like it's easy to have a protest vote if you're in a non-swing state. But if we are operating like, okay, well, there are a few states that could lead to one or the other outcome. We should maybe get into that. But yeah, the reasons why you can't, man, they are plentiful. I'll start with the inside baseball stuff. This is a anti-Ron Paul, like vocally, anti-Ron Paul, anti-Mises, anti-Lou Rockwell, anti-Mises caucus. I mean, his candidacy was the answer to that, so it's not like he came in just kind of like a neutral or, I have different ideas. This guy was like, F you guys, I'm the answer to that. So on a personal level, I resent that. Policy-wise, I would say that at the top of the list, before we get into the issues, just broad brush it, Chase failed the biggest test that any leader that we should take on that had in 2020. Chase listened to, and he would say, well, you're free to do what you want. Yeah, you're free to take the advice of the regime about mask mandates. And you're free to take the advice about getting the jibbity jab if you feel like it. You are free to do those things, sir. You're free to buy 100 versions of colorful masks to express yourself and virtue signal. You're free to do that. But that's not what I'm looking for in a leader. And that was a test, and you failed it bigly. So, like, I'm sorry, but you can't lead the most radical party in America. That's all automatic deal breaker. On a specific level, the position he's taken with puberty blockers for children, not being firm enough, just answering that clearly, bothers me a lot. It's funny, like he'll flirt around like that lefty kind of like healthcare is a right kind of world a little bit if it fits his narrative. Like I resent, and we could get more into this. This is, a hot topic amongst libertarian circles, but I don't care if a parent and a doctor and a child agree that you can mutilate that child. That is not in line with, nature
right.
and my beliefs. So, like other people would say, well, who are you to intervene? Okay. You can have that conversation. Are parents and tattoo artists free to tattoo their kid's face? Are they free to, should I leave it up to my next door neighbor if they want to punch their kid in the face nightly? Is that, well, whatever. That's how they parent.
Yeah.
So those kinds of things, guys, I think that these are like super deal breakers for me. I can't see co-signing that in any kind of way, or promoting that, or trying to get somebody to leave their tribe of red or blue to go, look at this. There's no way I would point somebody to that,
Yeah.
Well, yeah. So I feel like Alex is probably going to agree that that's not a. Those are not things that I think any of us here would be like, "Ooh, we're going to defend Chase on that." Like he got it right.
Yeah.
But Alex, how would you handle that? Like someone who thinks that maybe we should vote for Chase and encourage others. If someone is like Dave, whether they're a conservative or a libertarian or just a regular American who just hated the COVID crap, or who can just kind of understand intuitively that children can't consent to these procedures and stuff. I mean, listen, Chase's position is so bad and also inconsistent that even like Reason Magazine's Liz Wolfe was grilling him on it, saying,
and effectively too. Yeah.
Effectively, like, okay, you say, because Chase's position, to be clear, is he says no to the surgeries, but that it's okay for hormone treatments and puberty blockers. And she was like, well, why? Like, kind of feel like you need to be either for both or against both. Otherwise, it feels like you're just kind of like drawing an arbitrary line in the sand and not really giving a reason. So, he's definitely not a position that I would defend in terms of like saying that I'm for that. So how do you handle that, Alex, if you're having a conversation with someone and you say, hey, I'm voting for Chase Oliver, and either of those things come up?
Yeah, and I want to bring it back actually the first thing, because the thing that is the most frustrating to me about Chase Oliver is what he said about Ron Paul. I mean, like, Dave, you're 100% correct.
That made me so angry I forgot about it.
Oh, no, I know, and that's so
Blocked it
terrible.
out.
And like, I just don't know, like, what kind of libertarian you're trying to appeal to by attacking Ron Paul. I mean, like, I think even like left libertarians have respect for the guy for being consistent, you know? So that one was the one that really threw me for a loop. As far as the COVID stuff goes, I agree. He was not good on COVID, and he parroted all the regime talking points. It does seem as if his campaign has been walking some of that back lately, just following his Twitter feed. He seems like he's a lot more vocal against those kind of things. Of course, you know, it's hindsight's 2020. He knows now what he didn't know back there. And so it's very easy to say after the fact, okay, well, now that it's kind of acceptable to criticize this stuff, I'm going to go back and criticize it as well. I think that, like, my biggest defense of Chase Oliver is that Donald Trump is the father of the COVID chaos. Like, he's the one that kept Fauci in charge all throughout 2020. He's responsible for the lockdowns, and COVID-19 was probably developed in an American funded lab during his presidency. And then the Biden and Harris administration took what was a terrible situation and only made it worse. So both of the major party candidates are just as responsible. I mean, they're actually responsible for implementing these policies. Chase Oliver just responded to it in a very non-libertarian, non-critical way. Does not excuse him for what he said. I'm not trying to make it that case as well. With the hormone stuff, I agree. It's a really big problem. And I know that, Jacob, you know this, and Dave, I'm going to say it, and I hope you don't lose respect for me. I am a public school teacher. It's one of the reasons I'm a libertarian. I kind of woke up inside the system. You know, I literally had a red pill moment in 2020. And so I understand how damaging these drugs can be for kids. I think that if you look at the way that Chase Oliver has framed his position on healthcare on his website, he wants to open up the healthcare to the healthcare system in America to the free market. I mean, the reality is, and we all agree, we all understand this is true. We have socialized healthcare already in the United States. Like, we don't get to make decisions as consumers as to how we access healthcare. And I think that a lot of the reasons why puberty blockers, as well as antidepressants and ADHD medicine, are being pushed on kids is because the FDA has created a regulatory framework in which a lot of pharmaceutical companies and medical complexes make a killing giving these mostly unnecessary drugs to little kids. And so I think that if we did truly have a free market, and Chase Oliver does seem to believe that he wants a free market in healthcare, a lot of those problems would solve themselves, because you wouldn't have all of the negative and harmful incentives that come with having a socialized healthcare system. I think that would be the way that I would deal with those. And he is the one who is advocating for the highest level of markets in our healthcare system. I think that that's my defense. Again, I'm not saying that he was right or even good on any of those issues in particular. Dave, I totally understand all of your concerns. I just still think that he's better on those issues than the alternatives.
Yeah. Dave, you have any responses to that?
So I would agree that let's put aside the border stuff. Let's put aside the kid transing stuff. Let's put aside the mean things that he said about our friends.
Yeah.
Yes, he's going to be better on gun policy than either of the other two candidates. He's going to be better on tax policy and probably better on foreign policy, right? And I'm sure more issues than that, dude. Here's the thing, though, and this is where I think we need to really consider this. Nobody knows who he is, and nobody, when they go to check that box, it'll just be the third box. Like, we've had a real problem. This isn't Chase's problem. He didn't start this, but since the beginning, we've been the third box. We get the third amount of votes. We get millions of votes. We always have, between 10 and 20,000 members, though. So there's this huge disparity. There are millions of libertarian-leaning people out there that are looking for something. And obviously, we all want to protest vote. Sometimes that's good. Like, I'll accept it. It's easy to do it from Delaware. Here, Gary Johnson, no problem.
Right.
That was easy for me, and I feel clean doing it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I think that at this juncture, and really for me, I've talked some shit on Chase. I haven't really talked about Trump yet. But a lot of this changed for me post-Libertarian Party convention, when you came to me. When you came to me and said, what do you want? Because I know that he didn't come there because he thinks that we're really cool. He came there because he wants our support. He wants our votes. He wants, pay attention to me. That's what an egomaniac trying to get all the biggest numbers ever.
Right.
That's what he would want. But he's also, I know he's a liar. Everybody's like, oh, he promised these things. Who cares? It's Donald Trump. It's like, yeah, but he's also the deal guy. Like, he's done this very, very publicly, multiple times. I'll end the Department of Education. I'll free Ross Ulbricht. CBDCs are dead on arrival. Leave abortion to the states. These are like huge libertarian wins, like moving the ball way down the field, dudes. So to go back to those swing states, like you and I can play, dude, in Kentucky and Delaware, it's whatever. Like, I love the idea that I can go, fuck you, Joe Biden, in your state, Trump, motherfucker. You know what I mean? Sorry for cursing on the show. I should watch that. Man. I will in the future. But I'm looking for, a little bit of middle finger action with my vote. I always have. And in this election, it feels like, in the beginning we were joking like Kamala's not in it. That's because that's not a protest vote. We all feel that in our hearts. Literally, she's the sitting, essentially, number 2 in charge. But
yeah, that's
been everything that's been happening. You're responsible for that. Not to take away from what you were saying, Alex, about how Trump kicked off warp speed and how he still champions it. And dude, this is all true and awful. Bump stocks, awful. Talking about, we won't fight any stupid wars, but then, we'll bomb the crap out of them the next day. Like, this is who you're dealing with. But at the end of the day, from a utilitarian perspective, as the great Janet Jackson once said, what have you done for me lately? Like, Kamala she won't go on your podcast. She won't go on Theo Vaughn. She won't go on Lex Friedman. She won't entertain you, come to your events and go, what's bothering you? So, like, I know that that's not much. It's a promise from Trump. But I would ask you guys, how much more is a promise from Trump worth than a promise from Chase Oliver, who physically cannot? There is a 0% chance that, like, I know his policies are good. Your policies are good, Alex. My policies are good. Jacob's policies are good. But we need, like, somebody who can actually change policy. And for the first time ever, there's a guy who came to our little 1% party and went, okay, what's up? I think that that's really historic and, like, maybe deserves a second look.
Yeah, I will say one of the most compelling reasons to vote for Trump, when I'm thinking about this in my head, and some of the promises he made, I'm kind of like, yeah, I don't know. Like, when he said we're going to put a libertarian in his cabinet, I'm like, yeah, but, like, Trump's definition of a libertarian could be so broad that it could just be like, some lukewarm Republican who's like, oh, yeah, I'm a libertarian, it's like, oh, Ben Shapiro, I'm a libertarian, and puts, someone like that in his cabinet, and it'd be like, oh, okay, that was, not that helpful. But I forget some of the other promises. The free Ross one is the one that honestly is the most enticing because it's kind of a low cost to him. And I know he kind of already tried to do it before and kind of it just didn't work out because he waited too long. So, and even if he doesn't, it would be an opportunity to increase, because like after the convention, there was such a huge spike in the conversations around Ross. And even since then, Trump has name dropped Ross. So I don't know, like I really want to see Ross Ulbricht freed in my lifetime. That'd be amazing. And so I think that's a pretty I know Chase wants Ross free too, but is a vote for Chase going to go towards that, or is a vote for Trump going to go towards that? So, that's something where, I mean, put it this way: voting for Chase is a low risk, low reward. Voting for Trump seems to be a low risk, potentially high reward. Kind of seems the point that Dave seems to be making there. So, I mean, what are your thoughts on that, Alex? What, is there anything on the other side of the ledger that you're thinking of in response to that?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with all of those concerns, and I love that Donald Trump came to the Libertarian Convention, and I love that he's listening to libertarians, and I love that he's trying to appeal to us. The problem is just his record from his first term in office. He talked a great game in 2016, and even though I didn't vote for him in 2016, like when he was elected, I was kind of like, okay, this guy says he's going to drain the swamp. Like let's give him a chance. Like he's saying the right things, but by the time he left office, he'd increased the budget, he'd increased the deficit, he'd increased military spending, and he had harassed Jerome Powell because he believed that like Powell hadn't kept interest rates low enough. You know what I'm saying? And so like Donald Trump, I don't think he fundamentally understands any of the issues that are plaguing our country. He has some excellent intuitions. He has some really great intuitions, but he surrounds himself with some of the worst possible people. And now I hope, like, and again, to your point, Dave, a Trump presidency is preferable to a Harris presidency. And so, like, in the real world, I hope that Trump wins because it's going to be either Trump or Harris. And I think that Trump is at least going to be marginally better than a Harris administration. But I just don't see him, based on his record during his first term in office, making the kind of sweeping changes that I think we really need to have unless he learns to surround himself with better people. And he just did not have a good sense of that the first time around. Now, maybe he's changed. I hope that he is. And hopefully, like, in 2 years, we could come back on the Green Room and have this conversation again. And Dave, you and Jacob could tell me how wrong I was and how Trump actually did change the world. And I would love if that happened. I just don't believe it based on his first term in office. I just think he's going to get in there. He's going to allow himself to be rolled by whoever his most powerful influences are. And I don't think we're going to see any real change.
See, I love this position. I can sort of play off my cognitive dissonance on this subject and kind of do good cop and bad cop in both directions. So I'm going to take this back. I'm going to piggyback off Alex's point to Dave. Everything Alex said, and then also one of the knee-jerk reactions I get is that I feel like I get this icky feeling jumping back into we got to vote for the lesser of two evils. Because I think even as Alex said, and I'll grant, yeah, like Trump's the lesser evil. I would much prefer to live under 4 years of Trump than Harris. But there's a difference between me saying I'd prefer that versus I'm going to vote for it. Because especially for me to go around to tell people like this is who I'm voting for, because I feel like that just lends more credence. I know we hate the term duopoly because it's like kind of like an overtired libertarian talking point, but like there is truth to the problem of this two-party system we live in, where it's every 4 years we're kind of forced into this, voting for the lesser of two evils, and it's from both sides. I get nauseous hearing it from Trump supporters and family members who are Trump, who are like, "Oh, if Harris wins, it's going to be socialism and communism," and I'm like, "Man, we've been living under basically socialism for a while. Where have you been?" And then flip side, like my leftist family and friends, although that's a much smaller list. But my sister's a big leftist, and she's literally like, thinking like living in like she feels like Trump's an existential threat. And she's like, yeah, you know what? I would vote third party because I know the system's corrupt, but we just got to stop Trump. He's so bad. And I'm like, yeah, you said that last time and the time before. And like every 4 years, it's just, the other side's so bad. We got to vote for this one. And I really don't want to play into that because I feel like that just is part of the machinations that keeps the system of perpetual socialism and tyranny going. So what are your thoughts on all that?
So I would say, as far as, voting for the lesser of two evil, man, that's something that I've echoed for a long time, dude. I've only voted pretty much independent, libertarian, Ron Paul. I totally understand that. And if you were to go, dude, it's Jeb Bush versus Hillary, or it's, Nikki Haley versus Kamala Harris, or whatever. It's like something like that. I go, dude, you're right. Different store, same groceries. But I definitely feel like, and this is somebody, again, I've thought that most of our presidents are selected, not elected. The first time in my whole adult life, I thought that might be different with Donald Trump. I mean, they just shot at him, right? So, like, we're assuming that that's some real shit. Then forgive me again, biblical podcast.
You're good, man.
But I think,
listen, you're not as bad as Scott Horton yet, okay? So
right, okay, all right, yeah.
Scott set the bar high for swear words on our shows.
So I think, dudes, that we are in competition with the right in a way that we are not with the left. So libertarians right now who are in the Trump orbit, like Clint and Josie or Angela McArdle has been to Mar-a-Lago to discuss this. Like, this is better. This is, if we have people around Trump, I think that if, not only is that just advantageous politically, but Trump will respond to, ideas that are popular or that make him look good. So like if, like the CBDC thing is a perfect example, man. Like when, Vivek came up to him and was like, hey man, you should probably take a look at this. He's like, what is it? I don't know what that is. Tell me about it. And he gave him the lowdown, and he came out in a speech like a couple days later and was like, what's up with these CBDCs? We can't have this, So I really do think he's kind of ignorant, on a lot. And he's got some pretty good instincts, but I think, to your point, dude, horrible cabinet, horrible picks in 2016, some of the worst human beings on the planet. All I'll say is that, going right with what we can see right now with RFK Jr. and Tulsi, that's like more encouraging. Um, I, if Kamala has, Dick Cheney and the Clintons and the Obamas, I'd rather hang out with Tulsi and RFK Jr. We were talking about, people are concerned with the healthcare system. It's just they don't really want the answers. They want to just like fix it. You know what I mean? That's why libertarians have that uphill battle to like, just wait. How about we give you no money for anything?
Right. Yeah. It's a hard sell.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and that's where I totally understand that, and I've said this to a lot of people. If I was living in a swing state like Ohio or Pennsylvania, my calculation would be a lot different. Like I would really have to take all of those things into consideration. There is, I think, a greater degree of promise this time around with Trump than there was in 2016, at least from a libertarian perspective, because, like you said, it does seem as if the people that are in his orbit now seem to have more liberty-minded ideas. It's just a matter of whether or not he's going to keep those people in his orbit if he is going to be elected to office. And I think that that's the real challenge. I think another aspect of this for me, which makes it easy to support Chase Oliver, given the fact that like it doesn't really matter who I vote for at the top of the ticket, is that there are a lot of like progressive Christian types that I interact with online that are just all sold out for Kamala Harris. And she's all about peace and justice and truth and, the whole thing. And the problem is like every time someone posts that, I have a picture saved on my phone of Kamala Harris at an AIPAC rally. And I just post that because it's just so obvious that she represents the party of perpetual war and the party of perpetual debt. Like she is the antithesis of everything that these progressives say that they believe in, but they're all going to go and vote for her in November anyways. And so as a Christian who believes like that we should always be against war and that everyone should be given a fair chance and that we shouldn't give the power to control the value of our money to some of the wealthiest and most corrupt people in the world, it's really easy for me to pull the trigger for Chase Oliver in November and say, look, like I vote in a manner that's consistent with my principles when I'm debating with these progressives that I want to bring closer and closer to the libertarian side. It's like, look, you call yourselves Christians, but you voted for a literal war criminal, and I haven't done that yet. And that's a part of my reservation with Trump. I definitely understand the political calculus. It would be different if I was in a different state, but I also like being able to say that like I voted for Chase, and so like I'm pure, you know what I'm saying, like ideologically, which I know is not necessarily practical or pragmatic, but it does serve in terms of evangelizing to the progressive types that have sold out for Harris. It does serve a function for me in that way. And at the end of the day, I mean, I live in Thomas Massey's district, so I'm going to vote for Thomas Massey. Like he's the guy I'm voting for.
Dude, totally jelly over that. That's pretty awesome. He's the best. Yeah, you got Rand Paul too. So it doesn't bother you though that like I'll admittedly, dude, mass murder is, I can't believe I was going to say this. I guess mass murder is worse than what they're doing to these kids, but like that is some of the worst stuff. Yeah. And you know what, man? Like I'm on a Christian podcast right now. Like I've never identified as a Christian, but I have felt. And I've joked about this on the podcast I do with Smots. Like I felt like I've owed the Christians of the 90s an apology because, there's been a slippery slope on a lot of things that I just didn't see coming or thought that they were ridiculous claims and, come to see these things. It's just like the gradual degradation, demoralization of society. Like it just is kind of like a race to the bottom. And they really do use our natural empathy, and they use that against us, and they want you to just, I don't know how they do it. And when I say they, I don't know what that is either. I used to be very uncomfortable using terms like demons and, the devil and things like that. And I'm not even sure I don't have definitions for these things, but I'm okay using the terminology now. Like I feel like I've seen so much evil in the world in the past 10, 15 years. This is like, and I've been paying attention since 9/11, but just like ultimate evil that like I feel like I'm meeting God through the devil. Like I'm being pulled towards, like some of my best friends are Christians and like really getting a lot out of it. And using terms like, man, the armor of God, I'm putting the armor of God on. Like, this just like, it resonates with me when I feel like we're surrounded by such evil. Like, I really do feel that way, man. I don't know, it kind of got off on a little mini tangent there, but since we're on the Christian Institute podcast, I just figured I would put that out there.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. And I do think that this is where like the Christian analysis of human sin and human hubris really comes into play here. I think that if you look at the way that the Bible talks about the responsibility that human beings have, going back to Genesis chapter 1 and 2, which is the story of creation, it's the foundation for the way that we as Christians should understand the world around us. God creates this world and he rules as king over us. He gives human beings the responsibility of exercising his dominion over creation. So we're in charge of creation, but the one thing that God did not give us the responsibility as human beings to do was rule over other human beings. That was never supposed to be a part of the calculation. And I think that it's when human beings in Genesis chapter 3 decide that they're going to try to be like God and take that power upon them, that's when everything goes south. And if you look at the large arc of the biblical narrative, it really is just one long story of human beings trying to oppress other people through power, which is why I think the libertarian answer to a lot of these social problems is also deeply founded in the Christian tradition. And I think that so many of these evils, like the transitioning and the hormones for kids, I think that when very powerful people are trying to maintain their power, they will do whatever they can to maintain that, whether that's propagandize millions of people into believing that it's okay to mutilate their kids or give them substances that are harmful for them, whatever it takes for them to hold on to as much power as they possibly can, they're going to do that. And I think that we're seeing that play out right now. And I'm with you. Like the hormone stuff is really, really horrible. I understand how somebody that has Chase Oliver's worldview might be able to justify that morally, but it just doesn't seem, it seems like it's something that's contrary towards nature, right? Like we just kind of both understand that regardless of what your political positions are, and we're both good libertarians, we believe that when you're an adult, you should be able to do whatever you want, but that's not something that we should be able to force on kids. But also to like, I think an even greater extent, I see this working in the schools too. The hormones are really bad, but like, man, it's so easy for kids to get a prescription for Adderall or a prescription for Zoloft, and we have no idea what the long-term consequences of those pharmaceutical products are too. And one of the biggest lessons that we learned during COVID is that a lot of this comes down to the fact that the pharmaceutical companies completely own the regulatory agencies that make the decisions about what drugs are safe for kids and how doctors can administer those drugs to kids. And I think that whole thing is just so sick. And what we really do need is a free market solution for that problem. I guess I want to bring that back to you. I mean, because I don't know what Trump's position on healthcare is, because I don't think he talks about it very much. I mean, do you think that there's the potential within a Trump administration to address some of those systemic issues like that?
So I think because he's at least beholden to, like the evangelical right, that they'll be in his ear. And at the very least, you can count on them for that. Hey, man, we can't do this to the kids. And I think that I can't believe this got this far. Like in Delaware, man, I'm sure it's not this way in Kentucky. I hope not.
Yeah.
But in Delaware, Medicaid will pay for your kid. If you're poor, will pay for your kid to get that done. And in fact, they're trying to pass a law here that like if a kid runs away from Florida because Florida won't do it, it's like legalized human trafficking, man. Like come to Delaware, we'll do it, and we won't send you back to your parents. Like they're pushing for that kind of stuff. Already on the books, like, the teacher doesn't have to alert the parents. They'll send insurance companies in Delaware, like, don't want to have to alert parents to what they do for kids if they're on the policy, these kinds of things. So like, it's policy. It's not just like two like clashing parts of civilization. It's like, this is official policy, In fact, the Affordable Care Act mandates that you can't discriminate based on gender, ideology, all that kind of stuff. So, and if healthcare is a right, blah, 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 then a kid who's 13 years old can, get these things provided for him, and your tax dollars will pay for it. So yeah, as far as getting Trump to do something about that, man, like, I don't know. I have a feeling that like he's playing a Christian on TV. I don't get the feeling that he is one. In fact, I'm sure you've seen that clip where, they go, what's your favorite?
You guys talking about me playing a Christian? No. Sorry, I had to hop off. Sorry, I had to.
No,
which clip?
Go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was going to say I apologize. I had to rush away like that. I had a little bit of a mini family emergency. But what?
You're
So
good, man.
catch me up. What's the clip you're talking about?
Trump was on Fox years ago, and they were like, "Well, what's your favorite Bible verse?" And he's like, "All of them. I just like them. They're just all good."
I like them all. They're pretty great.
Yeah.
Well, listen, I mean, if he knew anything about the Bible, you know he would have chosen Nehemiah as his favorite. I mean, come on, building the wall around Israel.
Right, yeah.
I mean, he should really learn. See, Nehemiah is actually a libertarian way of building the wall, just getting everybody to build their own wall right in front of their spot, right? I mean, it's the perfect solution to the to the border problem.
Yeah, but instead he goes, "No, they're all good. I'd like them all."
Yeah. Classic Trump.
Yeah. That's part of the problem. I don't know where you guys are in the conversation, so I would be totally throwing it off the rails. But I got to tell you, from part of my issue with Trump is from that Christian perspective. That like so someone said earlier in the comments, Casimir asked if I think if I see a difference between like McCain style Republican and Trump style Republican, and like, yeah, sure, like I can see a difference, but there's also similarities that irk me, which is kind of the taking Christianity in vain sort of thing, but in different ways. Like McCain's like, yeah, I'm a good Christian man. I just advocate for, genocide halfway across the world. And Trump's like, I'm a good Christian man, even though I'm really just using this Bible for, and Christianity to get votes. And I've had, a million different relationships with different women. I mean, he doesn't really seem like on the stuff that Chase is bad on, the LGBT stuff, the woke stuff. I don't get the sense that Trump is like that much better even. Like, I'm not saying he's not like, I'm not saying he's as bad as like a typical lefty, but I don't see him as some kind of like great conservative cultural warrior or anything. If that makes sense.
Can I ask you guys a question?
Yeah.
All right. We all pretty much feel like Trump is full of shit, and he'll say what is is expeditious just to get it done, say whatever it takes. So if I've seen criticisms that like from the pro-life community that he's not full on national abortion ban, that's not his policy. Like, no, I'm going to leave it 10th Amendment style. We're going to kick it back to the states. That's a huge upgrade from Roe versus Wade being law of the land. So I guess my question is, is that better? Like, he's saying, I'll take the policy that will allow abortions, but you will, because of that, get less abortions happening, right? Or he comes out and says, I'm fully against abortion to give you exactly what you want, 100% of your policy, but he loses because that position will always lose in America right now. So like, can you see how that would be? Is that okay? Is that tolerable? Is that like okay? Is morally like to say something that might not be honest to get a better result? Like, it will save lives.
What do you think, Alex?
I mean, theologically, I would say no, but Donald Trump's a politician, and that's what politicians do. I mean, and I think this is one of the reasons why it's so hard for me to support really any politicians other than Thomas Massie or Rand Paul. And again, I think a lot of this does have to do with the fact that like the title of this episode is should libertarians support Donald Trump or Chase Oliver? Well, the question is like, Dave, do you really support Donald Trump, or you just think that he is a vehicle for achieving the policy goals that we want? He's just the kind of the means that we're going to get there. And I think that we both would probably agree, like, and it's the same thing with Chase Oliver. I don't necessarily like support him as an individual, but I think that what he represents is important. But that's one of the things that is so frustrating for me. It's very easy to pull the lever for Thomas Massie and Rand Paul because I think they're consistent, and I don't think they're lying to me when they get on TV and talk. But I think most politicians are like that, and I think that that's one of the reasons why people are so cynical and upset with the political system. But it does. I mean, the point that you make is kind of like a Machiavellian one. Like, good leaders, given the nature of our two-party, democracy that we live in right now, I mean, do they have to do that? I don't know. That's a challenging question. I guess I don't know what my answer to that question is from a political standpoint. So I'm going to kick it back to Jacob and see what he has to say.
Yeah. That's like, okay, from a pure strategy level, like I can understand the logic of what you're saying, Dave. I guess to me, it's always like we're evaluating who we're going to vote for. And there's also like two things here. There's who am I going to vote for, and am I going to be public with that vote and support? I can see an argument why a libertarian could go up there, at the they're in front of the ballot and they're like, man, I really don't know who to vote for, and they just go, you know what, I think Trump's better than Harris. I'm just going to vote for Trump. Don't like it, but I'm just going to do it. I think it's just the better option this time around. I don't think voting Chase is fine. It's another thing to go out there and be like, I'm going to support Trump. I think libertarians should support Trump. I think that like he's the guy we should be rallying behind. Now, I could say the same things about Chase, but I suppose there's on one hand, it would certainly be easier, right? So I have like a natural bias because like my crowd, I guess like the right wing Christian, sort of like environment that I'm in, it's a lot easier to do Trump defense. But I think it goes back to kind of what I said earlier, which I missed your response for. So this might be rehashing things a bit, but anytime I start to think about maybe supporting Trump, I just feel like I'm kind of enabling the sort of like the psychologically conditioned fear response that people have that makes them vote for Republican year after year after year. And I just, and again, even though I'm in the right-wing environment, just like with my church and my social groups, the reason I wasn't always a righty, I was a left-winger for a long time because I hated the sort of like Republican conservative environment I grew up in terms of the politics of it, because it was kind of like every 4 years they had this mindset. And when I found out about the truth, I found about the truth about like, our foreign entanglements from like high school age. And when I found out that it was Republicans and neocons that were largely responsible for that, I lost respect for conservatism and Republicans and all that. And I think that's why right now I'd like to vote for Trump again, even though I do see a difference between him and maybe a typical Republican on certain things. I feel like still I'm kind of playing back into that that sort of like, cult-like tribalistic mentality, whereas voting for Chase and telling people, you know what, like I don't even like Chase, but I'm voting for him simply because I am not going to support this system that has propagandized us to continue this cycle every 4 years where it doesn't matter who we vote for, what wins is the American government. What wins is the surveillance state. What wins is the military industrial complex. Like no matter who wins, a lot of these constants remain. And I just don't see, even with some of the, like, even if Trump delivered on some of his promises, I don't even know if, which to me seems like a big if, I don't really know that would make any meaningful impact. I think we would all agree the solution does have to be more local, right? That's like the Mises Caucus idea. It's a decentralized revolution. But is voting for and supporting Trump making the cultural impact to push people into that mindset of decentralization, or is it playing back into the solution's got to come from Washington and, you got to vote, the party line every 4 years because it's the most important election? Like, I feel like that kind of moves us, voting for Trump moves us away from the cultural impact that we want to have on people, which is to think more local, to think more decentralized, and to not buy into political propaganda. So those are my thoughts.
I don't know if we should use our vote as a way to propagandize the public. Like that's kind of what we're doing right now. That's what podcasts are for, and all the books that people are writing. You could do anything with that. You don't need a presidential candidate for that. Young Americans for Liberty does that. Fee does that. You could just do that. So running candidates, man, I don't know. I would look at that a little bit differently. I don't know. What do you think, Alex?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely understand that. I think a lot of it has to do with the motivation of the person that's voting. People vote for different reasons, and they have different calculations for voting. And it does, like we've said multiple times on the show, depend on which state you're in. I do think ultimately, given the reality of the American system, yes, theoretically, we have a federalist constitutional republic, but we know that we're actually the world's biggest empire, right? And that's just the way that things are. And so I do think that there are libertarians that could go and vote for Trump because they believe that ultimately the policy conclusions that his administration will come to would lead to more decentralization in the long run. So I definitely think that you can make that calculation and that would be a fair inference. So again, I guess it just a lot of it just depends on your mentality as a voter and what you're hoping to get out of your vote. I mean, Dave, I totally agree with you on that. Like you're like our vote, like one vote is not going to change the culture. What we're doing right now changes the culture. Building relationships with people and having friendships with them and talking to them and helping them work through these issues, that's what changes the culture, not casting your one vote for your one vote and 200 million for president.
In those conversations, when you tell people how you voted, that's part of that equation, isn't it? Like I feel like if I'm telling people that I think the system is been designed to work against us, that I think the solution's local, that I don't identify with Republicanism or the Democratic Party and all that, but then they know at the end of the day, oh, I still voted for Donald Trump. It's almost like they think I'm just a quirky Republican. It's kind of what my fear is, you know what I mean? And they're going to be like, oh, okay, Jacob's got some weird fringe ideas, but at the end of the day, he kind of votes the same way I do, so they're not really going to be intrigued to look any closer. Whereas when I have conversations with people, my friends and family, right or left, and they hear I'm not voting for either of the two major party candidates, that opens up the door for more conversations, especially when they hear, like, I've been able to flip things around to be like, hey, I'm thinking about voting for this Chase Oliver guy because even though I kind of hate A, B, and C over here, X, Y, and Z, like the war, the Fed, and like the war on drugs, like I think he's really spot on. And I think those are things that really matter. I don't know. Like I guess I might disagree with what you're both saying there. I think like, okay, does one vote make a difference to the result? No, but like your vote and how you talk to people, like, I agree, it's about building relationships and communicating, but like part of that is telling people how you voted or how you didn't vote.
But
right?
Are you worried about the way that it'll make you feel or the way that people might look at you if you vote for Trump, because you know the stigma that comes with that? Because I understand that. That's very close to white guilt. That's like Republican guilt. You come from like
I'm not really, no, I mean, I wouldn't be worried about it because I don't I'm pretty sure 95% of my family and church congregation and non-libertarian circles would be voting for Trump.
But you kind of rebelled against that. Okay, like so Smots, he lives in like a rural area, so that's like he grew up in that. His dad was a pastor, so he kind of rebelled against that, and it's kind of like, I live in like a blue area, so like the libertarian culture here is more conservative because it kind of just like goes against the grain, right? But I would just say this, man, if you're talking to people about like, just say, if I went up to somebody at the table, family table, and was just like, I'm going to vote for Trump for the first time, I bet you that some of the people at that table would be like, why would you do that? Trump's such a loudmouth buffoon. I would go, yeah, but, and then I would read that list of things that he said he was going to do. And I'll say this too, you guys, I'm sure you read Spooner, you know your Constitution. We can bro down with constitutional conservatives. We can get down with anarchists. And there's so much common ground that you wouldn't even be like picking stuff apart. Right. So that's what I would play on. I would go like, okay, I'm going to vote for Trump because when he came to my convention, he said, I'm going to crush these Marxists. It's a evil doctrine. I'm going to get these deep state criminals and thieves out of government. Like it was, you guys should go back and watch that. The last 5 minutes of it, particularly, I would challenge you to find anything more libertarian from any former president or Chase Oliver and Mike Tremont. Just a couple minutes of straight up fire. Now, I know it's just rhetoric. It's just a speech that was probably written for him by somebody, to cater to us. But the fact is that he came and he said it publicly. So much good stuff, dudes. So that's why I would say, like, hey, man, I'm not a fanatic. I don't have a red hat. You don't catch me on, Facebook yelling MAGA country or whatever. I'm just strictly utilitarian, kind of, like pragmatic about it. I'm like, radical in my party, like I wanted to have Dave Smith. If I couldn't have that, give me the most radical guy you got. But if you're not going to give me that, if you robbed me of my protest vote, which to me, that's what they did, then I'm going to have to look elsewhere. And that's pretty good, some of the stuff that he's been saying lately. And by the way, we just talked about, the war on drugs. He just said, national cannabis decrim. He's not even a guy who does any drugs or drinks or does anything.
Hasn't he also said like death penalty for drug dealers though, or is
Yes.
that?
No, he definitely said that, and I'm sure that I mean, keep an eye on the guy, but I'm pretty sure he means we got to watch the fentanyl coming over. These guys, using shipping containers and stuff. And probably
Sure.
not,
I mean, yeah.
Some are good people though.
Right.
Hey, there's good people on both.
That's it. Both sides.
Very
Both
fine
sides.
people on both sides.
Well, and here's I think from my perspective, the reality is that whether you choose to support Chase Oliver or Donald Trump, you're supporting them because you're a libertarian. Like it's ultimately about the principles, it's ultimately about the ideas, it's ultimately about the policies and the vision for the future. And the reality is that the vast majority of American voters are completely ignorant about policy, or they maybe only know one or two things about one or two issues that are very important to them. They don't think about public policy from a holistic perspective like libertarians do, because their policies are based on nothing more than political power. They're not based on principles like us. And so for me, like living in Kentucky, there are a lot of people that have a natural libertarian bend to them, and they vote for Donald Trump because in their minds, he represents anti-establishment. Now, he didn't run that way, or he didn't rule that way, but he represents anti-establishmentarianism. And so, or anti-establishmentarian, he represents an assault on the establishment, and he's just a giant middle finger to the people that are in power. And that's the reason why they vote for Trump. And then on the left, you have people that are going to vote for Kamala Harris because they believe that she represents fairness and equality and all of those kinds of things. And that's the only reason why they're supporting them. So it's all about rhetoric, even though neither of these candidates have actually delivered what their voting base expected that they would. And I think that this is what gives us a great opportunity as libertarians, regardless of who we vote for, to say, look, you like Trump because he's anti-establishment. Here are the things that Donald Trump has done that have actually been anti-establishment. Let me show you more. Or if you're talking to people on the left, you can say, look, you want a more equal and a more just society. Here's the way that your candidates have screwed this up. Let me show you that there's a different way to think about these issues. And I think that we can help bring people towards that middle ground. And I actually think, I mean, going back to what Dave was saying, I think that, like, for me, if I was going to vote as a libertarian for Donald Trump, all of my friends in Kentucky understand that I am a hardcore libertarian. If I went and told them that I was going to pull the lever for Trump, they would have questions for me about that. But that would also be a platform for me to explain to them, well, I'm voting for Donald Trump because I think that in the future, directionally, this is the best decision that I could make. And I think that that would actually open up some conversations that could be productive and push people in my life closer towards the libertarian worldview that we believe everyone ought to have. So I do think that, Dave, to your point, there is a strategy there that could be effective at bringing people closer into our philosophical camp.
I guess I can see how you could spin voting for Trump. I feel like I would just, me personally, I'd probably not pull it off.
Oh, yeah. Sure.
Although, so I feel like most of this time I've been maybe a little bit too unfair towards Dave. I've been punching his way a bit more often. But I can punch the other direction too, which is something, Alex, I think you'll appreciate. You and I have had a lot of conversations with the paleocons, guys like Stephen Wolf. I've had conversations with I'm blanking on his name right now. Andrew Wilson, the guy does the Crucible and is on the whatever podcast a lot. And we have our disagreements and we've hashed those out, but there also seems to be a contingent on the right who are embracing more of that, like, anti-interventionist, anti-deep state, anti-surveillance state, sort of old Pat Buchanan style conservatism, which still has some issues in my opinion, but like, I'll take that over, Ben Shapiro, John McCain, neoconservatism all day long. And although Donald Trump doesn't strike me as really a paleocon, he seems to be as close as we've ever had to, like, at least not being a neocon style Republican, and a lot of the paleocons have been attracted to that. So this was sort of what Vivek's appeal to libertarians was too. Like, we need to have sort of a nationalist libertarian alliance sort of sorts, which sounds a little bit contradictory maybe to some, but I guess that's perhaps an argument that you might be sympathetic towards, Alex, that maybe we should be aligning more with the right-wing nationalists right now because they're we're united against a common enemy, and we can take that as far as it'll go, and then once we hit a point where there's a natural breaking point, have those fight those battles down the road, but right now fight the enemy that we can fight in front of us. So what would you say to that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree with that. We were talking on our LCI text thread this week about the way that after Dick Cheney came out and endorsed Kamala Harris, Stephen Wolf, our Christian nationalist friend, was absolutely destroying the neocons on Twitter. And the reality is that even though progressive Christians say that they are anti-imperial and anti-colonial, like they only support politicians that want to give more power to the American empire. And so some of these paleo-conservative types, they're actually anti-imperial. Like they really do want to scale back the American military presence overseas. And they have a lot of values that are very similar to our own in terms of decentralization, localized control, individual liberties. And so I think that we should be trying to build bridges with these people. We should be saying, like, look, this is what we have in common. Let us help you. Let us help you complete these ideas that you have. It's just like with Stephen Wolf. I feel like almost everything that he wants could be completed through canon law. And as long as people have the ability to freely enter and exit a contract, then it's totally compatible with libertarian philosophy. We just need to try to build those bridges. I think that's a really important job for us to do. So I agree with that. I'd love to hear what Dave says about that though, too. I'd probably agree.
Yeah. So I think this is something that it's one more argument for voting for Trump. Like you want Trump to be in office. He or Kamala is going to be in office, right? We want him to be there because we will be within 2 to 3 degrees of separation from him. And this is where our power lies. If you can, he said, and Vivek did too, capital L, libertarian, very specific about that. So, I mean, that could mean Peter Thiel, and that I'm not sure what that could be good, it could be bad, who knows. But capital L libertarian, putting in the cabinet.
Nicholas Sarwark.
Yeah, right. Could be the one. I doubt it.
He's already a Fed. I mean,
Bill well.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Right. But I think that that's our best bet, man. Just like having people that have his ear. And you mentioned Ben Shapiro, dude. This guy and his operation and people like that have been controlling the narrative for the better part of 10, 15 years on that side. So you have to make something better than that. You have to make something more appealing. Yet we have to start seeing, people that talk about the Constitution. Trump's talked about some good stuff. He never talks about liberty, man. Never talks about the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and the importance of that. It's usually about kicking ass, big numbers, big polls, like that. That's fine.
The best, yeah.
The best at everything. Right. I'm not supporting him because I think he's the best. And he didn't come to our convention because he thinks we're really cool guys, right? This is transactional. Like I want something from him. And so that's what I think we should do. Put people close by and try and steer him away from the Ben Shapiros of the world and closer to people like Dave Smith and make it cooler. Make it cooler to look at. And he'll want to be around the cool kids. That's something you can count on him for.
No, I agree with that. I do want to ask a question, if you don't mind, real quick, Jacob.
Yeah.
And this is the one, because again, it's like we said before, I'm not under the illusion. I'm sure there are some libertarians out there that are, but I'm under no illusion that Chase Oliver is going to win or even really have a meaningful impact in any state. I mean, libertarians have covered the spread in the swing states over the last couple of elections. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out. But ultimately, like, I would kind of like to know from both of you, like, does Trump have an actual chance of winning the election? Like, will the CIA let him become president if he wins the Electoral College? That's my question. Like because after between the assassination and the Russian collusion hoax and everything that the media has done to try to paint him, all of the lawsuits and everything, I just don't see how the powers that be are going to let it happen, even if he is fairly elected.
Go ahead.
What do you think, Dave?
All right. Yeah, I would say, dude. If that's true, if we're operating under the assumption that we have, there is actually peaceful transfers of power and there are actually different power sections vying for this control, okay, then the people who have been doing this to him and persecuting him and just shot at him, they should lose. We should make sure of that. If that's the reality, then we can't just throw all that in the corner and go, well, duopoly, left, right, basically the same. No, wait a second. Like, this is ultimate evil here. Like, if we're operating under these circumstances, if you could look at it a different way, and I can absolutely entertain the fact that at least maybe since his ear got popped, he seems like he's been a little different. His footing is a little different. It would be very possible that they got to him and were like, hey man, we didn't have to miss. Like, you want to be the guy, like, you haven't heard him talk a whole lot about January 6th lately. You know what I mean? I actually heard him use the term like alt-right or hard right the other day. You've got these people on the hard right. You know, you've seen the Antifa on the left. You've got the hard right. Like, he is not what either side thinks he is. He is the New York shrill, commercial.
Definitely
critical.
agree with that.
Yeah.
Right, that's what he is. He's not the hard right, hard left. He will say what it takes, whatever it takes. That's why he always does commercial guy for board games, credit cards, restaurants, whatever. That's what he does today. So I think it's very possible that he is becoming the establishment guy. I'll give you guys this, and I'll pass it off. AIPAC doesn't seem angry that Donald Trump is going to be the guy. Seems like they're actually quite for that.
Yeah,
so
I mean,
that's pretty much all you need to know.
You steelmanned what my response was going to be, which was that I can kind of see Alex's concern, but I can see like the opposite thing going. Like, I don't know, like, are slopes that damaging to the Secret Service, or, you know, is it, because sometimes I'm almost wondering, maybe the establishment wants us to vote for Donald Trump. Like, I can't tell. Like,
feels like
there are psyops within psyops within psyops, man. Like, it's hard to, like, I want the simulation to be reset because I can't keep up with it anymore. That's
a really good point, man.
Yeah,
Listen, I'm serious. I've talked about this on Smart Show a lot. Like, I used to get I'm an old head. I'm 43. I remember the propaganda back in the 90s. In the 80s was only American flag waving Rambo, Schwarzenegger, you know, like Superman, like all the He-Man. It was just like masculine shit. America, F yeah, we are the best, number one. That changed at a certain point. The propaganda went to like demoralizing stuff. Now it's all the drag stuff and the LGBTQ, you know, America sucks and America is racist and all, you know. It's very demoralizing. Go back to Yuri Brezhnev. Over generations, you are just broken down, and they've gotten us to the point where it feels like you got me yearning. Just give me that American flag. I want to wave it so much. Like they've turned it around. So it has maybe spurred on some, you know, your worries about nationalistic tendencies and things like that. And absolutely be very skeptical about, you know, the devil coming into your church. The government's been coming into churches for, you know, like 70 years, but they really did a number on the evangelical churches in the 80s, and they you know, effed up the black churches, you know, in the 60s and, you know, through the 80s. But you know, don't let those guys in because they're steering things too, those mega churches and whatnot.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like we've covered a lot of ground here tonight. I feel like we've done a good job at sort of representing the arguments for and the objections against both of these candidates and why libertarians might want to or not want to support either one of them. I don't know if it's gotten me closer to really making a decision because I can really see both sides here, and I literally argue with myself and find myself flip-flopping back. I think at the end of the day what matters is that no matter how any of us vote, that we do try to spin what we're doing in the same direction. And like, I feel like that's what we sort of fostered here tonight, was a spirit of like, you know what, like, you know, maybe at the end of the day, we all three vote the same way or three different ways. But what we're all trying to do is channel that towards liberty and channel that in ways that work off of each other rather than against each other. And I'd like to see the liberty movement do that more often. Unfortunately, I think some people have more than just Trump derangement syndrome. I think there's a bit of always, even when I disagree with the Mises Caucus, there's always been a lot of Mises Caucus derangement syndrome as well, because every interaction I've ever had with Mises Caucus people has been like this, has been, you know, people who are very thoughtful, who don't even all agree. I mean, Alex is a Mises Caucus guy from Kentucky who is, you know, at least before the conversation, thinking about voting Chase. I don't know if Dave's changed his mind. He can let us know here in a second. And Dave's thinking more Trump, and I'm like, I have no clue. So I just think this is all really interesting and hopefully very thought-provoking and educational for the audience today. Alex, I'm going to give you a chance for like a closing thought here, and then Dave, and then we'll get out of here.
Yeah. One, Dave, this has been a really fun conversation. It's awesome getting to know you, and I've really had a blast tonight. So we're going to have to do something like this again soon. I think ultimately I have respect for people that vote on principle and for people that have reasons for why they cast their vote. One of my really good friends in 2016, he was a huge Bernie Sanders supporter. And instead of shifting to Hillary Clinton in the general elections when Bernie Sanders lost, he voted for Jill Stein because he felt that she better represented his political views. I have nothing but respect for somebody like that who's informed and they want to vote for someone that has their principles. So whatever you decide to do and whoever you decide to vote for, just make sure that you're voting for them for the right reasons. I think ultimately that's what really matters.
Well said. Did Dave change your mind, Alex, or are you still?
Oh, well, I'm probably still going to vote for Chase Oliver. But like I said, it doesn't matter who I vote for. Trump's going to win Kentucky. It's just the way it's going to be.
Fair point. Fair point.
Yeah.
Dave, go ahead and give your closing thoughts here. Also, Alex, I should have told you to plug your stuff. Protestant Libertarian Podcast. Go check out Alex's show. It's incredibly underrated, and I don't. Do I have the award for the most appearances on that show, or actually, I got to be up there?
You were number 3. The running gun battle right now is between Lori Calhoun from the Libertarian Institute and Cody Cook, but you're close.
I love Lori. I have not had her on my show yet. I need to get her on.
She's incredible.
She's wonderful.
One of the smartest people I've ever met.
Yep. Dave, go on and thank you for being here, Dave. This is your first time on any of my shows, and I appreciate that. We'll definitely have to do something again soon sometime. But go ahead and give your closing thoughts, and then plug your stuff too before we get out of here.
Yeah, man. Jacob, I appreciate the invite, brother. We've met a couple times in real life before a podcast, so that's way better. And Alex, Thank you, man. I really appreciate it. From very thoughtful critiques, and yeah, dude, you seem like a real good guy, and you made some pretty good arguments for that awful human being. So, if anybody could do it, I'm just kidding. Just kidding. No, I'm definitely not here to, vouch for Donald Trump. So I hope nobody got it twisted like that. And I don't believe that, my vote has a whole lot of weight to it. Most of it, if I'm talking about, I feel like when people talk about their vote in America, they feel they're the guy who's been saving up some money and goes to the car dealership to buy a new car. And he just wants to be treated like, royalty when he walks in there because he's a consumer. And but they don't really give a shit. Like, they don't care about our vote, especially if we live in Delaware and especially if we live in Kentucky. But this is kind of like the good part. And, dude, I do appreciate, we probably are voting for different guys. But it's good to have healthy debate. I love talking with libertarians, but it's not, we agree on enough stuff. Let's kind of sharpen the steel a little bit there. So, yeah, man, I appreciate the time, and I'm just trying to keep that Ron Paul revolution alive, man. Wherever it goes, I'm going to just blow on the embers a little bit. If I see him over there, I'm going to go over there and just nurture that for a little bit. And if it's over here for a minute, you'll catch me over there. And, if the Democrats ever become the party of the people again and they flip sides again, you'll catch me over there. I cut my teeth when George Bush was the president, and the people on the left were talking about, ending wars and doing the right,
those were the days. Those were the days, man.
Right.
Those were the
I missed the anti-war laugh. They were cool.
They were cool, man. And that's why, that was my political awakening after 9/11. No war. No, you don't get to murder people. We can talk about, domestic policy after we decide not to murder people overseas. But,
agreed. 100% agree with that.
Right.
Yep. Thank you both. Oh, and where can people find you at?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Dave vs. Goliath 1, and you can support my YouTube channel. I'm trying to get those rookie numbers up. Tomorrow I'm interviewing Angela McArdle, so we'll talk about some FOIA requests and Donald Trump, I'm sure, and, all kinds of, drama. Who knows? We'll see.
Awesome.
Some war rallies we got coming up. So.
Oh, yeah, those are coming up. Well, thank you, Dave and Alex, for both of you coming and having this lively exchange. And thank you, everyone who tuned in to listen. Before you hop off, please make sure, if you haven't already, to like this video wherever you're watching it and subscribe. If you haven't, try to do at least 1 or 2 live streams a week here on these channels. So, and then make sure you go to libertarianchristians.com and you can find all our articles there and all of our podcasts there as well, including mine, the Biblical Anarchy podcast, as well as Alex's. So that's all we have for you tonight. I'll be back here, I think, very late tomorrow night, having a conversation with some other buddies of mine who are going to be a little bit more, I don't know, probably disagree with me a little bit more strongly than the two gentlemen here with me tonight, but it should still be a good conversation. That's my friend Hody and Jeremiah, who's in the comments. And then next week, I think it's next week or the week after. I'll be hosting a debate on Malay, if Malay is an ally or a enemy. That's next Saturday. There's going to be hosting a debate on different libertarian perspectives on Javier Malay, so that should be pretty exciting. So stay tuned for that. But that's all I got for you guys tonight. So take it easy, keep up the fight, live at peace.